The island of Gyaros in the year 65 of our era was a rock in the Aegean where almost nothing grew, where fresh water had to be dug for or carried in, and where Nero sent men he wished to erase without quite killing. When Musonius Rufus arrived there, banished by the emperor for the crime of teaching philosophy too well and being too widely loved for it, the other exiles already on the island are said to have expected a broken man, a Roman knight stripped of his city, his students, his standing. Instead, he began, almost at once, to walk the coast looking for a spring. He found one. He found several. And around him, in the months that followed, a small community of scholars and displaced men gathered on that barren place because the philosopher had decided, quite calmly, that a change of place was not the same thing as a ruin. You may not have heard his name often. Musonius Rufus is the least famous of the great Roman Stoics, and yet he was the teacher of Epictetus, the man who taught the man whose lectures Marcus Aurelius carried in his mind on the northern frontier. He is the root of a tree whose branches you know, and what he did on Gyaros in that first exile under Nero is the reason we have from him a small body of lectures preserved in Greek by his students, in which he argues with astonishing steadiness that exile is not an evil, but only a change of place. Let us reflect on that proposition. Let us examine what it meant when he said it, what it cost him to say it, and what he would have you consider if you were seated on the stones of that island, listening. The principle Musonius teaches, and teaches with a particular authority because he lived it not once, but twice, is stated most directly in his 9th lecture, which bears the title, in the manuscript tradition, that exile is not an evil. The lecture opens with a visitor, himself an exile, who has come to Musonius in some distress, complaining of his circumstance, and Musonius answers him in the translation of Cora Lutz, which preserves the older idiom faithfully, in something like these terms: "It is not exile which troubles you, but your opinion about exile. For exile does not deprive a man of water, or of earth, or of air, or of the sun, or of the company of other men, or of the ability to see the gods, or of the exercise of virtue. And if it does not deprive him of these things, in what sense can it be called an evil?" The argument is characteristically Stoic in shape. It is the argument you find in Epictetus later, when he says that men are troubled not by things, but by their judgments about things. It is the argument you find in Marcus, when he tells himself, again and again, that the harm lies not in the event, but in the estimation. But Musonius is not repeating a formula. He is speaking from a rock in the Aegean. And so when he says that exile deprives you of nothing essential, he is testifying, not theorizing. Consider what he means precisely. He does not say that exile is pleasant. He does not say that it is comfortable, or that the exile does not miss his home, or that grief is unphilosophical. What he says is narrower, and therefore stronger. He says that exile does not touch the things that make a human life good. It does not touch your capacity for justice. It does not touch your capacity for self-command. It does not touch your capacity to think clearly, to act well toward those in front of you, to hold your soul in an orderly condition. It changes the place in which you exercise your virtue. It does not remove the virtue, and it does not remove the field in which virtue may be exercised, because that field is wherever you happen to be standing. This is what the Stoics called the doctrine of the indifference. Wealth, reputation, health, homeland. These are not evils and not goods. They are the materials given to us. What matters is what we do with them. And exile in this scheme is simply a rearrangement of the materials. The rearrangement may be sharp, it may be difficult, but it is not, in itself, a wound to the part of you that is properly yourself. Musonius puts the point in one of his most memorable formulations. He observes that the same sky covers the exile as covered him at home, the same sun, the same stars. The gods, he says, are not the gods of a particular city. They are the gods of the whole world. And so when a man is sent from Rome to Gyaros, he has not been sent out of the world. He has been sent to another part of it. You may find this severe. You may find it, at first hearing, almost cold. But hold the thought a little longer, and consider that Musonius is not addressing a man in comfort. He is addressing an exile in the presence of another exile. And what he is offering is not consolation of the softer kind. He is offering instead an argument. He is saying, your grief is real, but your grief is founded on a mistaken estimate of what has been taken from you. Nothing that is properly yours has been taken. And if that is true, then the weight you carry is heavier than it needs to be, and philosophy can lift some of it, not by magic, but by correction of judgment. To understand how such a man came to be arguing this on such a rock, we must go back a little. Gaius Musonius Rufus was born, we believe, around the year 30 of our era, in the Etruscan town of Volsinii, into a family of Roman equestrian rank. He came to Rome, as such men did, to make his life among the educated and the well-connected. But he did not enter politics in the ordinary way. He turned instead to philosophy, and specifically to the Stoic school, which by then had a long tradition in Rome, going back through Panaetius and Posidonius to the Greeks, and running through such Romans as Cato the Younger, and, in Musonius's own generation, Seneca. We know something of his teaching manner from the fragments his students preserved. He lectured in Greek, which was the common language of philosophy even in Rome. He taught women as well as men, and argued, in a lecture that survives, that women too should study philosophy, because women too possess reason. He argued that sons and daughters should receive the same moral education. He argued against the exposure of infants. He argued that a philosopher should farm, work with his hands, live simply, eat plainly. He argued against elaborate hairstyles, against depilation, against the softness that Roman wealth had produced in Roman men. In a city that admired refinement, Musonius admired discipline. He was popular. He was also, therefore, watched. His first exile came under Nero. In the year 65, in the wake of the Pisonian conspiracy against the emperor, the same conspiracy that led to the ordered suicide of Seneca, Musonius was implicated, or rather, he was found inconvenient. Tacitus, who dislikes vagueness, gives us the fact plainly. Musonius was banished. The place chosen was Gyaros. Gyaros. It is worth taking a moment on this name. The island lies among the Cyclades, a small mass of rock, largely without freshwater springs, without arable land in any generous sense, without shelter, without population beyond a few fishermen and the occasional exile. Roman writers use its name as a byword for desolation. Juvenal, in a later generation, will speak of Gyaros in a line about the poor and the disgraced. To send a man to Gyaros was to send him not to death, but to something the Romans, with their taste for gradation, found more instructive: a slow disappearance in which the man himself was expected to feel day by day, that he had been removed from the world of men. Musonius, once he arrived, did what he did. Philostratus, in his life of Apollonius of Tyana, tells us that Musonius on Gyaros searched for water and found it, and that when Greeks from the mainland heard of it, they came in numbers to see him, and that a kind of gathering formed around him on the rock. This story may be embellished. Philostratus embellishes, but the shape of it is confirmed by other sources and by Musonius's own lectures, in which he speaks of exile from within it, without bitterness, and describes activities of ordinary life continuing. He did not, in other words, sit on the shore and grieve. He walked, he looked for water, he taught whoever would listen, he wrote or dictated lectures which his students carried back to the mainland and preserved. The philosophy he had taught in Rome, he continued to teach on Gyaros. The place had changed. The philosopher had not. He returned to Rome after Nero's death in 68 under Galba. He was in the city during the civil wars that followed, and there is a striking passage in Tacitus's Histories where Musonius appears, walking among the soldiers of Vespasian as they approach Rome, urging peace upon them, praising the goods of peace and the evils of war. The soldiers, Tacitus reports, mocked him. Some threatened him. He continued to speak. The scene is characteristic. He believed that philosophy was to be practiced in public, at cost, in the actual circumstances one found. He was exiled a second time under Vespasian, when that emperor expelled the philosophers from Rome, all of them, or nearly all. Musonius, we are told, was singled out and permitted to remain, and then, when circumstances shifted, exiled again. He returned once more under Titus and died, we believe, sometime in the 80s of the 1st century. 2 exiles, a life in and out of the city, a body of teaching preserved not by his own hand, but by pupils, one of whom, Epictetus, would carry the Stoic transmission forward to the age of Marcus Aurelius. This is the man who tells you that exile is not an evil. Now let us look more closely at how the principle actually functioned in his life, not in the abstract, but on the rock. The first thing to notice is that Musonius did not argue exile was not an evil after he was safely home. He argued it while he was still on Gyaros, and he argued it to another exile, a man in the middle of the same experience. The lecture we have is not a memoir. It is a philosophical exchange conducted inside the condition it addresses. This is significant. A man may speak lightly of a fever once the fever is past. Musonius spoke lightly of exile while exiled. The second thing to notice is what he did with his hours. He looked for water. This is not a small matter. On Gyaros, the chief practical problem of life was water. Ships brought some. Wells and springs, when they could be found, gave the rest. Musonius, an equestrian from Volsini, a Roman gentleman by rank, went out and looked. He is said to have found springs by observing the vegetation, by watching where certain plants grew, by digging in likely places. Whether this is precisely true or partly legend does not matter. The point, preserved by the tradition, is that he engaged with the actual island. He did not treat Gyaros as a symbol of his fall. He treated it as a place with features requiring attention. This is philosophy in the Stoic sense. The universe, they held, is rational and providential. Every place is a part of it. Every place, therefore, offers the materials for a life. To sit on Gyaros and refuse to engage with Gyaros, to sit on it only as one exiled from Rome, is to make of oneself a ghost. Musonius refused to be a ghost. He walked the coast. He drank the water he found. The third thing to notice is that he continued to teach. The gathering around him on Gyaros was not a formal school, but it was a school in the substantial sense, a place where men came to hear a philosopher speak and to ask him questions and to be corrected by him. In one of the lectures we possess, Musonius takes up the question of whether exile impairs a man's ability to educate his friends, and answers, with what one imagines was a small, dry humor, that on the contrary, exile provides a great deal of leisure for the activity and removes many of the distractions that afflict a teacher in the city. He is quite serious about this. He observes in the same lecture that many of the greatest philosophers did their best work in exile or in poverty. Diogenes, he says, was banished from Sinope and became, in his banishment, the Diogenes whom the world remembers. Had he stayed in Sinope, he might have died an obscure minter of coins. The banishment did not ruin him. It made available to him a life he could not otherwise have had. You will notice that Musonius is not arguing that exile is good. He is arguing something more careful. He is arguing that exile does not, of itself, prevent a good life, and that in certain circumstances it may even conduce to one by stripping away encumbrances. Do not mistake this for the sentimental claim that suffering makes us wise. Musonius is not sentimental. He is saying precisely that the materials of a good life are portable, that they travel with the person, that they cannot be confiscated at a border or lost with a house. He returns, in several of the lectures, to a particular argument about what exile does and does not take. He observes that some men, when banished, complain that they have lost their friends, but he asks in reply what kind of friendship it was, if it could not survive the friend's departure. A friend who forgets you when you are absent was not a friend when you were present. He was a companion of your circumstances. The circumstance changed, and he departed with it. What has been lost in that case is not a friend, but the illusion of one. And philosophy, Musonius suggests, is not distressed by the loss of an illusion. He observes, similarly, that some men complain of the loss of their property. He replies that a man who required his property in order to live well was already before his exile in a condition of dependence unworthy of a rational being. The philosopher, he says, needs food, clothing, shelter, and the exercise of his virtue. These he can have almost anywhere. If he had more, and the more is taken, he has lost the more, not the essential. There is a hardness in these arguments. Let us not soften it. Musonius is not offering the sympathetic embrace of a modern counselor. He is offering an examination, sharp and detailed, of what the exile has actually lost, and he is finding, item by item, that the losses are less than the exile had supposed. The purpose is not to deny the pain of exile, but to correct the account. And in his own case, on Gyaros, the correction worked. This we can see from the shape of the life he led there. He was not a broken man. He was, from the reports we have, a busy one, engaged with his surroundings, teaching those who came to him, writing lectures that survived him. When Nero died, and he was permitted to return to Rome, he returned to a city convulsed by civil war, and he walked into it, into the camps of soldiers, and spoke to them of peace. This is not the walk of a man whom exile had hollowed out. This is the walk of a man for whom exile had been, precisely as he claimed, a change of place. He was exiled again. He accepted that too. And when he returned again, he taught again. There is a consistency to this life which is not merely biographical, it is philosophical. He had argued that his goods were portable. His life demonstrated that they were. What then is Musonius actually teaching you? He is not teaching you that you should welcome misfortune. He is not teaching you that displacement is desirable, or that the loss of home is a spiritual opportunity to be sought. These are the reductions of a later, thinner age. Musonius does not romanticize Gyaros. He simply refuses to grant it the power to unmake him. The teaching, stated plainly, is this: there are things that belong to you and things that do not. The things that belong to you are your judgments, your intentions, your acts of will, the disposition of your inner life, the quality of your attention to whatever is in front of you. The things that do not belong to you are your city, your property, your reputation, your bodily comfort, the presence of particular persons, the arrangement of your circumstances. The first set of things cannot be removed by any external agent. The second set can be removed at any moment, by illness, by politics, by accident, by time. To locate your good in the first set is to be, in principle, unshakable. To locate your good in the second set is to be, in principle, at the mercy of whatever comes. Exile is a special case of the general truth because it removes so many of the second set at once. Home, city, property, friends of circumstance, reputation, the daily habits of one's public life. All these go in an afternoon when the imperial order is read, and so the exile is forced, more sharply than the man in his own house, to see what he actually has left. If he has located his good in the things that are gone, he will feel that everything is gone. If he has located his good in the things that remain, he will feel that everything essential remains. This is why Musonius, though he never sought exile, could receive it without collapse. He had done the work in advance. He had, over years of teaching and self-examination, moved the center of gravity of his life inward, into the seat of judgment, away from the surrounding goods. When the surrounding goods were stripped away, he still stood upright, because the standing was not done by the surrounding goods. It was done by what remained. You will hear, in this teaching, the shape of what Epictetus later formalized in the Enchiridion, when he distinguished between what is in our power and what is not. You will hear the shape of what Marcus wrote to himself again and again in the Meditations about the ruler faculty within, the hegemonikon and its inviolability. This is the Stoic inheritance, and Musonius is one of its clearest voices, perhaps clearer than the more famous names, because he speaks from the exact circumstance the teaching is designed to address. Notice one more thing. Musonius does not tell the exile to suppress his feeling. He does not tell him to pretend to be content. He tells him, rather, to examine his opinion about what has happened and to test that opinion against reality. If, on examination, the opinion turns out to be exaggerated, the feeling founded on it will, in time, correct itself, not immediately, not by an act of will, but by the slow work of thought correctly directed at the situation. This is the Stoic method. It is not the suppression of grief, it is the education of it. And the education is grounded in a proposition about the world. The proposition is that the world is one place, governed by one order, and that a human being, wherever he stands within it, is at home in it insofar as he stands well. The exile from Rome is not an exile from the world. The gods, Musonius says, are everywhere. The sun rises on Gyaros as it rises on the Palatine. The rational order which philosophy contemplates is not the property of any city. It is the constitution of the whole. If you can believe that, or come to believe it, then a change of place is only a change of place. Your homeland, in the deepest sense, has not moved, because your homeland is the world itself, and you cannot be exiled from the world while you are still alive within it. We have come then to the close of what Musonius would have you consider. He would have you consider first that many of the things you fear losing are not, on examination, as essential to you as you have supposed, not because they are worthless, but because they are not the seat of your good. The seat of your good lies further in. He would have you consider, second, that the practice of philosophy is not the memorization of doctrines, but the slow relocation of your center of gravity from the surrounding goods to the ruling faculty within. This is done in small acts, daily, in ordinary circumstances, long before any exile is imposed. Musonius did not learn to bear Gyaros on Gyaros. He learned it in Rome, in his lecture room, in his manner of eating, dressing, speaking, in his refusal over years of the softness that would have made him fragile. He would have you consider, third, that if such a relocation has been made, then whatever comes may be received without ruin, not without difficulty, not without loss, but without the collapse of the person, because the person, in the sense that matters, is not made of the things that can be taken. And so the question he leaves with you is not what would you do if you were exiled to Gyaros. That is a question with too much drama in it, and Musonius, we have seen, did not care for drama. The question is quieter. It is this: if everything around you were rearranged tomorrow, the place, the people, the standing, the plans, what in you would remain? And is that thing, whatever it is, the thing on which you have been building your life? Or have you been building on the arrangement, and only meeting the thing that remains by accident, in rare moments, when the arrangement fell quiet? Musonius would ask you to look, without hurry, and to answer honestly. He would not tell you what he found on Gyaros. He would only tell you that he found something, and that it was enough.